Dotted notes or dotted beats. What do they mean? And what do the dots do to the original note? That's what we're going to be discussing today. So, we can take a look at notes as a full beat. I have one beat here. If I add a dot, what I'll do is I'll add half of that original beat to the total, and I get 1.5. Let's take a look at quarter notes. If I draw a quarter note, I can say that I have one full beat. One full quarter beat. If I add a dot to the quarter beat, I get 1.5 of that quarter beat, or part of the second beat. If I have a half note, then I get 2 complete beats. Don't worry, we'll get into detail about what all of this means. If I take a look at a quarter note and I split that in half, I get 2 eighth notes. An eighth note is half of a quarter beat, or a quarter note. So it's like having a full circle, and I split it in half. I have 2 separate pieces. Now, if I look at dotted quarter notes, it's like I'm taking the 2 eighth beats, but I add another eighth beat to the end of it. So I have 3 halves. I have 1 full beat from the 2 halves and 1 extra at the end. I have 1.5 quarter beats, or 3 eighth beats, or 3 halves. Let's take a look at these 2 beats. I have 2 complete beats, 2 quarter beats. If I divide them in half, I get 4 halves. Now I can divide it a different way. Well, what I want to do is I want to add a dot to the original quarter note to make it slightly longer than the second beat. So how do I do this? Well, I want to take 1/2 and add it to the beginning. So I'm going to divide them into eighth beats. I have 4 separate eighth beats, 1 and 2 and. I will connect the first 3 halves together to get 1.5. It will look something like this. There's 1 eighth note by itself. At the end, the first 3 are going to be combined. So what I get is a dotted quarter beat. 3 halves, or 1.5. So I have 1/2, 2 halves, and 3 halves. Or you can see a complete beat plus half of the second beat. They are separated from the last eighth beat. I will have 1 and 2 and. The first beat gets 3 eighth beats, 1 and 2. And the and of 2 becomes the last eighth beat. So you see that the dotted quarter note is the same as 3 eighth beats, or 1.5 quarter beats. Let's see what happens when I add a dot to a half note. I will get 3 quarter beats. How is that possible, and where does it come from? Well, let's dive right into it. Half of a half note equals 1 quarter beat. So I know to add that to the original 2 that I have from half notes. So what about dotted quarter notes? Well, I have 3 eighth beats. Where does that come from? Well, half of a quarter beat equals 1 eighth note. So I add 1 eighth note to the original 2 eighth notes, which make a quarter beat. Here's another way to look at it. I have 2 eighth beats here, and I want to make the first one slightly longer than the second one. So what happened to this note here? What I have are 3 16th beats at the beginning and 1 16th beat at the end. I basically have 4 16th beats, but I combine the first 3 together and let the 4th beat stand by itself. Let's see how this differs from eighth notes. we are probably very familiar with this pattern. I have a quarter note plus 2/8 beats. I have bread, pizza, bread, bread. The 8th beats are going to be very even, exactly half. Take a look at what we're going to do here. I'm going to divide those into 4 separate pieces so you can see exactly how many 16th beats go into a dotted 8th beat. Well, I have 3 combined together plus 1 at the end. It'll be the difference between ta, 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 and ta, 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 ta. Let's look at it with this last example. I have 2 quarter beats here, and I'm going to divide them up into 2 blocks of sound that are the same size. What happens is I will add 1/8 beat to the original quarter beat and get a dotted quarter beat plus 1/8 beat, or 3/8 beats in that dotted quarter beat.